Namaskar, dear viewers. Today we'll be discussing on a very important topic, very relevant to the present day environment. The topic is environmental, social and governance. When you look at the environment in the present century, it is facing a lot of challenges. The most important challenge is the declining natural resources. The second important challenge is that the loss of biodiversity, climate change, stratospheric ozone depletion, and also if you look at it, there are new developments as far as the impacts of climate change is concerned. A lot of diseases, vector-borne diseases, and new multi-drug resistant organisms also is coming up. So there are many challenges. Along with these environmental challenges, if you look at it, there are certain when you look at the corporates also facing a lot of responsibilities. And because they are earning a lot of money, and whatever the money they are earning, they have certain responsibility to the environment, to the conservation of environment, preservation of environment, and also social responsibility as well. When I talk about the social responsibility, because the corporates or the financial institutions, they have a very important role to play for the upliftment of the human beings, human welfare, health of the human beings, and also the economic growth. So these are the second important thing that as far as the corporate environment is concerned, the corporate responsibility is concerned. The third important thing is that the governance structure. So when you talk about the economic development, that whatever the economic development we are talking about, that should not cause any harm to the environment. So for that purpose, the corporates, the industrial houses, the financial institutions, they must take a lot of precautionary measures so that their actions will have a minimum impact on the environment. For that to take place, they should have certain transparent governance structure, because when you talk about the organization, they have a lot of organizational setup will be there, and those organizational setup should be transparent, and they should not be involved in any kind of malpractices. And the main goal of the financial institutions or the corporates should, in addition to the profit making, they are responsible for the human welfare, and at the same time they are responsible for taking care of the environment. So having said this thing, let us go into the topic environmental, social and governance. So having said the challenges, we'll look at it how best the corporates, the kind of the standards we have, the what you call that corporate social responsibility, and also environmental, social and governance, how it can help us in furthering our goal and achieve sustainable development goals. So I just talked about the need of the ESG. A lot of challenges are there, and the second important thing is that what exactly the ESG is, environmental governance. What is that? So this particular concept, if you look at it, it has been evolved since 1970s, and it is a very important concept. Why? Because it is multidisciplinary in nature, and since it is having a lot of disciplines are involved and kind of dimensions, if you look at it, it is having multi-dimension. So when I say multi-dimension, as I said that the environment is important component, the social component is there, even the governance, marketing, even the supply chain management, demand management, and whatnot, everything, economics is also there. So it is a multi-dimensional the concept, the environmental, social and governance. The second important thing is that the main aim of this ESG is that they wanted, in addition to the social responsibility, environmental, the safeguards or environmental stewardship. So the most important thing is that the balanced growth of the enterprise. When I say balanced growth, in addition to the profit making, they also should take care of the their supply chain management, or in other words, life cycle management. When I say life cycle management, whatever the products they are producing, how much it is causing harm to the environment, or in other words, the products, whatever they are generating, it is causing harm to the environment. By suitable analysis, by suitable technologies, they have to minimize the carbon footprint. So that is the basic, if you understand the concept part of ESG is concerned. So the third important thing is that, as I talked about the ESG, it slowly and steadily, if you look at the concept, has evolved since 1970s. The significant thing is the corporate social responsibility as a concept also, it has also helped for the evolving this particular concept of what you call ESG. So corporate social responsibility, as I said, that because in addition to the profit making exercise, whatever the thing investment they are doing it, the decision making process, they must take into account the social, the environment, and also ecological environment. So this corporate social responsibility is contributing immensely to the concept of ESG. The last one is the investment aspect. When you talk about investment, the investment should be responsible investment. The financial institutions, they should, whatever the investment they are making, it should be very responsible in nature, and at the same time it should be sustainable in nature. When I say responsible, means that all the paraphernalia, like the environment, social, governance, everything has to be mainstreamed. That is one thing. The second important thing, that it should be a transparent structure, and whatever the decision making process is concerned, it should be a diversified in nature. When I say diversified, multiple group of people should be involved, community should be involved, all the expectations of the stakeholders has to be taken care of. That is the reason why this ESG concept is a very significant concept, and in the present century, 21st century, this is a very important kind of a milestone in the financial institution management is concerned. So the last one is the responsible investment. So next is that, let us look at the evolution or the concept. What are the major developments that has taken place in the ESG timeline? As I said, that the concept of ESG has evolved since 1970s, but the most important thing is that in 1980s, the Brundtland report, and in the 1990s, most of the international agreements, when you look at it, whether it's the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change or Agenda 21, Rio Conference, or even the treaties, the agreements on the biodiversity and climate change, there are many things happened in the 1990s. These all have, in a way, contributed for the development of this concept called CSR, that is corporate social responsibility. Why? Because the bottom line is the sustainable development. All the sectors of the society, irrespective of their background, everyone was aspiring to achieve sustainable development. For that to take place, what are the measures has to be taken, whether it's a national government or the state government, even at the corporate, the industrial houses, the financial institutions, everyone were zeroing down to the concept of sustainable development. So for that to take place, because it's having a lot of nuances, and at the same time it is perhaps it can provide a lot of solutions, positive and environmental friendly solutions. That is the reason why, irrespective of the governments, everyone wanted to go for this, adopt the principles of sustainable development in every action. So in that way, the concept of CSR also developed in 1990s. Thereafter, slowly and steadily, what happened? This, the most of the corporate social responsibilities are voluntary in nature, and it's perhaps it has not been quantified. So they wanted some other standard, kind of a benchmark. For that to happen, many developments has taken place in the 2000. In the year 2000, what happened was the United Nations came forward with a kind of a committee. So this is called as United Nations Global Compact. It was established, this particular UNGC was established with the purpose is that these global financial institutions, they should be should integrate in their decision-making process, this, what is it called? The environment component or social component, kind of a transparent structure, organizational structure. So for that, this particular organization, that United Nations, came forward in the year 2000. Thereafter, because they slowly and steadily, the values, the corporate values, even the responsibilities what they have towards the humanity, so everything has been structured. It has been kind of streamlined in the year 2000. Later on, in the year 2004, very important document was released by this particular organization, United Nations organization, along with a group of financial institutions also. That particular document is a very significant one. That document is titled as Who Cares Win. Who Cares Win. And in this particular document, through this particular document, United Nations also gave certain principles. What kind of laws, what kind of principles, values those the what you call the corporates or the financial institutions or global institutions should take care of it. Those principles it has cited. In fact, it was 10 in number. So this particular principle is kind of a bedrock for the process of ESG, the standardization, certification, rating, so on and so forth. So this, let us see one by one those principles. Later on, if you look at it, many things have happened in the last decade as well, in the year 2020, and later on also, even at the international level also, there is a very important development was that the organizations, institutions, even in the industrial houses, they signed an agreement, kind of an agreement, so wherein they stated that they will be adopting all the principles, ESG principles, in their day-to-day activities, so that they'll be having a utmost responsibility for the society and also for the environment, upliftment of the people, and even they will be taking all the steps possible, because to safeguard the the kind of pollution they are releasing into the, whether if it's an air pollutant, what kind of problems they are going to cause to the environment, they'll be taking immense steps to safeguard the environment. So that's what the very important thing that has developed in the 2020. It's a very significant thing, because if you look at it, the almost more than 2,000 organizations, or in other words the industry leaders, so they signed this particular agreement. It's a very, very important thing, wherein the major thing is the sustainable development and also the responsible investment. So these are all the two important things that has happened in the last decade. So let us see one by one the principles. When you look at the principles also, the significant one is that those principles will be talking about the human rights, labor laws, how to avoid the corporate bankruptcy, how to increase what is it called, the investment potential. Because when you have the investment, if you increase the investment potential, definitely they'll be having a better way to meet the expectations of the stakeholders. So these are the principles. Let us see one by one, and thereafter how it has been zeroed down into the in a nutshell the ESG component. Let us see one by one. So as I talked about the principles, there are 10 in number, and first important component is human rights. So what are the business activities or any activity, economic activity, they should not cause any harm to the human rights. There should not be any kind of violation of law, human rights law. So that is the significant component of this United Nations Global Compact principles. The second important thing is the labor. So when you talk about the labor, there should be a lot of the ways to prevent the child labor, forced labor, and even the employment, the wage employment. Everything has to be structured, and that is the reason why these principles talks about these components, and in a way avoid as much as possible the discrimination that can creep in the employment or also in the occupation. So these are the principles the business houses should take care of when they do any kind of decision making. Next set of principles are environmental related. And when you talk about the environmental related, as I talked about, because they should not cause any harm to the environment, so definitely they should imbibe the principle of precautionary approach. And the second important thing is that they have a lot of responsibility for safeguarding the environment. That is the second principle. And third important thing is that whatever the technologies, it should be appropriate, it should be sustainable, and at the same time it should be eco-friendly in nature. And the last one is that because when you talk about the transparency, the most important thing is that the business house should act against corruption. And because a kind of a transparent structure, if it is there, definitely they can meet the expectations of the stakeholders. And in that way, their performance, that is the business house performance, whether it's a productivity and everything, will be improved tremendously. So these are the principles. And these principles, if you look at it, 10 in number, it has been divided into different latitudes, and those latitudes are called as environment, social, and governance. So this is all about the ESG, the groundwork, or in other words, the timeline that has happened, and what we are today discussing is ESG principles. These 10 principles are put into these 3 important pillars. And when you talk about the framework, ESG framework, because I talked about the environment component, social component, and governance component. The basic purpose of this particular framework is to look at the corporate contact and also evaluate what kind of the outcomes, the financial outcomes, because the profitability is also most important thing. So along with that thing, how well they are contributing to the environment conservation, and also they are fulfilling the needs of the society. So that will be measured by using this particular ESG framework. The second important thing is that because when I talk about the CSR, it cannot be quantified. When you go for a ESG, the framework, it can be quantified, it can be measurable. That is a significant component, because whatever the actions the business houses are taking, whether it can be quantified or not, that has to be taken into account, because the customers, they must know that whether the particular business houses, they are taking into account these kind of principles, ESG principles. And at the same time, the most important thing is that because the investors, because whoever wanted to invest, they should know whether the particular business house, they are following certain principles, ESG principles, and at the same time, whatever the investment is there, it is, to a proper house. When I say proper house, because only then the what you call that, there will be, the wealth of the what you call that investors, that can be improved. So that will be possible by, if the corporates are adopting ESG principles. When they adopt the ESG principles, there will be a lot of mechanisms are there, whether it's a technological adoption, whether it's the green innovation or a green finance. And also, if a very important thing is that the ESG performance will be drastically increased. When there is an ESG increase in the ESG performance, what will lead? It will lead to the increase in the wealth of the stakeholders, or in other words, the investors. So that is the most significant component of ESG dynamics. Next is that when you look at the component, or in other words, the framework, again, it's a simple one: the environment thing, the social component, and the governance. As I repeatedly was talking about the environment component, it deals with the the ways or the measures or the policies, how best the organization or the business house will be having reduce the impact. That is the most important thing. The second important thing is the responsibility aspect. When you talk about the responsibility aspect, because it's most of non-financial measures. Because there is, when you talk about the business, one is the financial outcome, the other one is the non-financial outcome. When you talk about the non-financial outcome, whether it's a macro level or a micro level, this is a very significant component to measure the productivity of any industrial houses. The third one is the structure. It should be transparent thing. So let us see one by one in detail. And now look at the environment component. Because when you talk about the environment component, the business houses, before taking the decisions, they should cater to the needs of the stakeholders, and at the same time they should take measures to minimize the impact on the environment. For instance, when you talk about the climate change, because they should minimize the carbon footprint, and they should minimize the release of greenhouse gases emissions, and not only that thing, even the air pollutants also. And the kind of their economic activity should not have any impact, negative impact on the environment, whether it's a biodiversity loss, or in other words, even the whatever the waste they've generated, they're releasing into the environment. It should not be hazardous in nature, and these all the aspect has to be taken into account. So in nutshell, the climate change, biodiversity, the waste management, or waste reutilization, or in other words, recycling of waste, how best we can adopt the principles of circular economy. So these all will be part of the environment component. The second one is the social component. When you talk about the social component, the most important thing is the labor laws. It should be, definitely there should not be any kind of discrimination, whether in employment opportunities or even the occupation. And there should be, definitely avoidance of the child labor or forced labor. And the most important thing is that the welfare of the workforce. So that has to be taken into account, because when you talk about in industrial houses, it is even everything. It's a kind of a systemic link, organic link. The workforce is also very organically linked with the organizational setup, starting from the lower rungs to the top chief executive officers. So kind of an organic link will be there, and this organic link has to be taken care of, because that is very much part of the social responsibility. And not only that thing, even going further, the customer satisfaction, even the kind of benefits the customers will be getting, everything has to be taken into account as far as the social dynamics is concerned. The third one is the governance structure. Basically, when you talk about the governance structure, how best it is the contact of the particular even decision-making authorities, and the diversity that is in the decision-making process. When you talk about diversity in boardroom, who exactly, whether it's the independent directors or whether it is having a what do you call the diversity in gender. So everything has to be taken into account, because when these many concepts, if it has been imbibed, definitely the structure will be more transparent, governance structure will be more transparent, and since it is more transparent, definitely their actions will be prominent, and it will be definitely having a very important role to play for the economic growth of the organization and for the country or for the global economy as well. So this is the part of the governance thing, because as when you talk about the governance, the diversity is the most important thing, and also they should have an accountability also. So this is about the three important pillars of ESG. When you talk about the performance, ESG performance, as I said earlier also, because the most important factors that can influence the ESG performance. When you talk about ESG performance, the kind of the green technologies, or in other words, the digital transformations, if it has been taken care of by the business house, because the digital information, or in other words, the adopting certain new developments, whether it is information technology or in the digital resources, if you look at it, so that can have a drastic effect, whether it's in agriculture sector or industrial 4.0, in every way possible. This kind of digital transformation is going to increase the performance of any organization. The second important thing is the finance part. When you talk about finance part, the green finance and green bonds and whatever the things, because since these finance is having a sustainable connotation, so that can have definitely a positive outcome. Non-financial outcomes, that's what I mean actually. So the green finance strategies has to be adopted by the ESG compliant houses, industrial houses. The third important thing is that, as I talked about earlier also, how the CSR activity, that is corporate social responsibility activity, also helping to develop the concept of ESG, and even for achieving the goals, whether it's the environmental component or social component or governance component. This is having a kind of a mix, this both CSR and ESG. It's having a kind of a good relationship. The last one is a very important thing as far as the performance of ESG is concerned, is the diversity in the board. When I say board diversity, as I said, gender is a very important thing. Independent directors are important thing. So there's a possibility, whatever the decisions they are taking, they'll be taking into account many aspects. And not only the profitability component, the second one is the environment component, social component. So kind of the outcome of the decision making process, if you look at it, it will be very, very significant thing, because of the board diversity. This has to be taken into account, and this will definitely make the investors also should look for this the kind of positives in the industrial houses. So the next one is that when you look at these aspects, the most important thing what comes to everyone's mind is that, so the quantification aspect. The second important thing is that the benchmarking. When I say benchmarking, so the ESG standards, if you look at it, that has to be taken into account by every houses. So in that way, what happened, the investors will be more happy to invest. And the second important thing is that there is kind of a checks and balances. When I talk about checks and balances, because they have a very important role or responsibility to serve the country or serve the people. So that kind of thing is automatically imbibed in the industrial houses. The second important point as far as the ESG discussion is concerned is that what kind of what is next. When I say what is next, we have talked about the evaluation aspect, the timelines we have talked about it, we have talked about the three different pillars of ESG, the significant one, ESG, we have discussed, and also we have discussed that we need to discuss that what next. When I talk about what next, what kind of impact these ESG compliant businesses can have on capital markets, and whether it's a secondary market, what kind of impact it can have, and also this kind of how best the industrial houses are disclosing their reports. When they talk about ESG reports, they need to disclose their reports. They should be very transparent in nature, because when they are transparent, definitely what will happen, definitely, because everything is open. When I say it's open, the decision making process is open, and the way they are meeting the expectation of the stakeholders is clear, and they are also involving the community in lot many ways, not only in decision making process, in lot many ways they are involving. So these kind of disclosures can help to have a better place in the corporate landscape, the global corporate landscape. That is a very significant development as far as the when you look at the ESG discussion is concerned. To sum it up, today we have discussed about the significance of ESG, how the concept of ESG has developed, what are the three important pillars of ESG: the environment component, social component, and governance component. And we also discussed that what are the factors that can influence the performance, ESG performance also. Lastly, we have discussed about the how the industrial houses, if they adopt the good standard of operating procedures, or even the ESG principles, if they adopt it, how best they can play a very important role in the global landscape as far as the corporate environment is concerned. Thank you very much.